now hear from one of our esteemed customers from HDFC Bank, his perspective about working with Aerospike and what it entails. For this, I invite Mr. Lakshmi Narayanan, CIO and Group Head IT, HDFC Bank, onto the stage. Of course, with a loud round of applause, please.
Good morning to all of you. Namaskara, Bangalore. It's little awkward that a boring banker is actually addressing a bunch of techies. And I thought, it's important to give that perspective because, I'm sure most of you have a bank account, and many of you would probably have an HDFC Bank account. That's what HDFC Bank means to the India story. But there's been a bigger story that's been unfolding at the bank, and I thought I'll kind of share that with you. Because like all the speakers alluded to it, India is changing. India is changing by the minute, by the second actually. And we are in very, very exciting times. And if the banks don't compete, and they don't compete at scale, it's going to be very, very difficult. They are very central to the entire system, as all of you know. And there is this whole tussle that's been going between fintechs and the banks. And it's an interesting play out. All of you would have kind of followed this. If you've been in 2016, 17, 18, 19, you'd probably say, or 20, fintechs are taking banks for, lunch, and they're basically going to kind of eat up the space. You had all the apps coming on UPI, an explosion of account aggregators, DigiLockers, lending applications. But circa 2022, suddenly things started changing because suddenly there is this whole regulatory aspect that started coming in. You had a lot of things, guardrails that started coming in, and somewhere in between, banks started learning to understand technology, and the fintech started to understand regulations. I think so. It's a very interesting play out as we see this going around, and HDFC had been at the center stage on that. And why this is very important to us is that we had a series of issues on our tech platforms in 2019 and 20. In fact, I just come in 15 days, and we had a big blowout of our data centers. And then from there we said, how do we go about this? And one of the things that, as a part of the strategy, that we thought is, you can't reach technology or adopt technology if you don't build technology. It's very important. I mean, banks have always been buying technology. They would just go to Infosys, they would go to Oracle, they will go to a lot of the corporations, buy platforms and put it together. But those are old school of thinking. Today, if you have to compete in a mobile world, you have to be there right every single minute, every single second. How do you do it? So we said, can we build a mobile app? And that's what this whole journey started with. And it started right here in Bangalore, so this is a very significant importance for us. And one of the things that we said is, we will not build it in the classical banking style. We're not going to call people into large offices, try and put all the controls and the bureaucracy around it. We said we're going to do it with a very small bunch of people sitting in Bangalore. In fact, we started working out of a co-working space in Koramangala with about 10 engineers, and we started this project. So that's the kind of passion that we throw. I'm going to take you through the journey, and Aerospike has been a very key partner. So that's why I actually agreed to do this session, because they've been part of this journey. And they said, and this product is, by the way, not yet launched. It's just getting launched. So you will see a huge amount of this. It's probably a sneak preview in what you're going to see is what is going to come in a few months. In fact, it's already in the market, but it'll start kind of getting scaled up as we go along. So right, so this is just the background of why I'm here, why this is being done, right? So I'll just move. Hopefully this works. Otherwise I'll move. Okay. Now when you think about India, everybody spoke about it, right? We all know these numbers on the top. One number that you need to notice is UPI again at 14.9 billion transactions in August, right? That's like unbelievable number. And one of the other things that we are very clearly seeing, which I wanted to call out, is 2 in 3 searches are coming from outside of the top metro. What does it say? It says that the digitization is not limited to where we are sitting. It is deep, and it's getting deeper and deeper. And that's why it's very important that what we are seeing in India is very unique. We're not here an urban-centric digitization. and the banks have to really respond to this, today, whether they're building the kind of platforms, what they put on the table, and we'll talk about that. Now, what does it mean for the HDFC Bank? That's also very interesting, numbers here. So look, we do about 20 million customers who touch us, every month actually. And sometimes, we kind of see these numbers and we think about the large fintech, scale fintech. We don't look at a bank. Outside of probably, one of our competitors, we probably say, yes, we are probably the largest transactors in the banking industry. We do about 86% of our acquisitions digitally. We do about 97% of our transactions are digital today. And we do about 75% of our servicing out of our networks digitally. Which means there is very little touch that people are getting into the banking industry today. And like I said, these are very mind-boggling numbers. And when you start looking at this, and when you're trying to build an app, it's for a very different scale. And that's why this was a very passionate project for us. It's not like building a mobile app from a ground-up startup. This is a mobile that will be built for an already adopted base of almost 25 million customers. So it has to scale very, very differently. And it's a transition from an old app to the new app. So that's why we thought this is a very, very critical aspect of it. So how did we look at it? When we said we'll build a new app, we said it has to have a very different customer-centric experience. We'll talk about it. And that's why I put the rural slide. This is one of the first apps that will be actually a truly multilingual app. On the go, actually. We are looking at scalability in a very different performance, and I'll talk about it in the future slides, because one of the principles that we said is we are moving from classical thought process in banking industry to an active, passive, database-driven thought process. All of you know, I'm sure each one of you knows CAP theorem out here. And frankly, most of the times banks have just shipped logs from primary to DR, and that they've tried to run their applications. So whenever there's a downtime, it takes that certain amount of RTO, because the log shipping kind of technology doesn't scale up. There are OLTP transaction technologies that came, but they came at a very different pace and at a very different cost. And this is where we wanted to look for an app which is a completely active app. Which is where, we looked at Aerospike in a very different light, saying, can I run a kind of a far DR on the go action? And we'll talk about it as we go along. Security obviously was very critical. I'm not talking about AI. My presentation is not about AI. There's a lot of coverage on AI. But the fact is that how to use that. So one of the key elements of this app that we see on the right side, you'll see some of those, carousels. Actually, each of those carousels that we are trying to do, they're going to be personalized, which means when you log into the mobile app, you actually get your own persona, mapped up. And that's a very different fact. In fact, we kind of learning. In fact, some of the banks that do this very well. In fact, for us, there's been a bank in South Korea which has been inspirational out here. Not a bank in the West actually. We looked at a bank in South Korea which was doing it at this personalization at scale, where every single carousel could be personalized. So this is very critical for us. And of course, cloud native and resilient architecture was kind of, it goes without saying. So as a bank in 2020, we adopted hybrid cloud. People spoke about hybrid cloud. We have a very interesting multi-cloud. We work on all the three CSPs. We don't limit ourselves to one particular CSP. One hyperscaler, we actually work with all three, and I'll talk about that. But these were the principles. So, okay. So now if you see, I've just broken down into what are the highlights, of this platform. So you will see some very interesting platforms. There is financial inclusion, spoke about it. This personalization, spoke about it. We have a very interesting one-time pay, which you will find very interesting. The entire payment icon is a one payment icon. Nobody cares today whether you're trying to do IMPS, RTGS, NEFT, UPI. You need a payment icon. Backend rail should be actually driven by where you are at that point of time and which particular channel you want to show. So we've kind of very clearly standardized that. So in our mobile app, you will not see multiple payments. You'll just see one payment bar and that's it. Then of course, one pay option and non-OTP. It's one of the few applications you'll find without an OTP. And why are we doing this? Because today SIM and device binding provide you that much of security that you don't need an OTP. In fact, OTP is less secure. That is the reality today. I spoke about personalization, one payment handle. Then of course we have a very interesting non-logged in section. So you could do practically everything from without even logging in. Your UPI payments, you can do your balances, pretty much every transaction you could actually do out of the NRI section. You don't even have to log in at certain aspects for quick transactions. And then of course we have, pretty much a plethora of functionalities. I'm not getting into that because this particular, talk is not about the functionalities, but a lot about the engineering aspects. I'll cover that. So given that, so how are we looking at it? So when we thought about design, one of the clear principles was an active, multi-cloud, secure every transaction, and resiliency. We spoke about it. Now let's just get a little deeper into it. Okay, so here how are we looking at this whole architecture, right? So we have an Aerospike in region, near DR and a far DR. So what we are doing, the first page of the mobile is getting served out of the Aerospike clusters, and these clusters are on two far DR geography. We basically have a CDC which we built in, interestingly, because we had to migrate 20-25 million out of an existing RDBMS to an Aerospike. So we built a CDC structure to do that, and basically this allows you to do the migration on the go. Then we have a custom Aerospike client for seamless switching between primary and DR, which is very critical because there are times in the banks when you have to take a decision what you want to do. Everything cannot be auto switch because auto switch can also have its own problems. So that's another area that we looked at it. And then, like I said, this entire service, so the way we built is your net banking actually works out of a different cloud, your mobile banking works out of a different cloud, and we have a layer called common services which runs on both clouds. Just to give you that perspective that even if the cloud services go down, at least one of the channels will continue to work. So that's the kind of engineering design that we went into to be able to get to this level of this. So what's it like? We've been testing it out right now at about 125,000 concurrency as we speak. The factory continues to test it out. We are fairly focused on a lot of chaos testing has happened, largely around dead partitions, clock skews, lot of focus around the engineering aspects on testing actually. And then, we have like I said, a multi-grid spread horizontally scalable architecture which we have built so you can really spread. And what we have done here is interesting. We spread the nodes both on vertical and on horizontal side. So really we go at a cross kind of a grid structure where if your nodes are getting blanked out either vertically, they can go horizontally in the availability zone. And even if that availability zone goes down, then you go to the far DR. And this is all real-time, on-the-go kind of structure. So this is very critical from the way we looked at the architecture, because without this, you can never think about an active architecture. Okay, so now let's just get a little bit more detailing. It's a little bit of, this is very important. Okay, so if you see today, the way we are structured is again we are a Mumbai-based bank. Banks were very traditional. In one DR production in Mumbai, one DR somewhere in Bangalore, and they will ship logs and put it together. That's how banking used to work. This is a very different design. So if you see, we are spread over four clusters, and this is cut between GCP, AWS, and HDFC. So we have an on-prem because core banking continues to be on-prem, and we are doing some very interesting stuff on hollowing the core. I'll talk at some other point of time. But core banking continues to be an RDBMS-driven, monolith that we can't kind of get away. But hopefully we will do something about it. We are doing something about it. But on the mobile, if you see here, the way this whole stuff works is today, because of this latency that you see, nothing is beyond a 90 ms kind of a structure on this. And this is very critical. Because what we are trying to do here is we are spreading our entire reach out into the country. And we are kind of again splitting the channels in a smart way so that you don't have a blowout in one case. And this has been again from our earlier learnings actually. And this is what today's technology can have. So each of this is actually the cache is spread over on these four regions actually on real-time basis. Some more data points here. So how does this little look like if you little peel it down? So if you see here, you have actually four clusters. You have the HDFC on-prem, and DR, which is where the core banking stuff. OBP is our middle layer, which kind of talks to the Oracle databases. But if beyond that, if you see on the upper side, everything is spread out. So the mobile banking and net banking is split again, again between the two cities, basis the GCP and AWS structure. And like that's how we have kind of cross-cut it and ensured that this is absolutely, always on kind of an architecture. I'm just mindful of the time, so I'm just going to make it a little quicker. So from a security perspective, what are we looking at? This is very important. And again, some of this stuff that Subbu spoke about, we've been using some of those thought processes here. So we have a runtime protection. Of course, the mobile app is fully built on a runtime protection, so you can't mirror the mobile in any sense. There is no way you can mirror. And most of the frauds on the mobile today happen because the mobile apps get mirrored, and then you don't even know because your mobile is put on a phone mode, on a flight mode, and then that's pretty much what happens. After certain, and these are very documented frauds in India. So we try to do that. This is very interesting. We run a behavioral biometrics, engine here, which means what kind of authentication will be required. There is no way that this one single authentication. Of course, in fact, you'll find a very refreshing feature. We are doing away from passwords on net banking. So you can just straight away get to the net banking login, but you'll have to scan your QR code using your mobile device, which is a device and SIM bound. And only when the QR code is accepted, of course, you can always choose the OTP angle. That's a different thing. But we'll give you the choice now to say, don't try and log in. You don't need a password. As long as you have a mobile which is device and SIM bound, you're good to go. We have something called adaptive authentication, which allows, so the minute your behavior changes, which that we use, Google has done this brilliantly, all the other guys do it, but we are now getting into that saying a small behavioral change and adaptive, so you will get a step up or a step down. And this will happen real time actually. And then of course, like I spoke about the passwordless. So these four aspects, the fraud detection, the runtime on the mobile, the adaptive authentication, and the passwordless is what is the kind of security construct that we're building in here. Again, some part of the resilience, like this is important from an Aerospike perspective. Like I said, this is a multi-spec, and like both the spreads here are horizontal and vertical. And what we are doing is we do have a in-between auto engine to decide where you want to go should one of the clusters fail actually. So this is the core of the engineering out here. Of course, we have used a lot of other platforms, and I'll talk about it a little bit, but Aerospike has been core to our design actually. How did we do it? Like I spoke about, we created a factory in Bangalore. In fact, most of our engineering teams are not bankers. They come from PayPal, AWS, various other institutions, and they sit, like as I said, they don't sit out of, again, we don't have any fancy buildings. We have a very small office in Deveshri Chambers now. So we started with a 10-member team. We have about 150 people, and their only job is to build this mobile app actually, and kind of run it at scale. And again, here we have not gone with the normal, our SRE teams are very small. We're only about 20-25 people running this whole mobile app resiliency engineering. And again, very, very different thoughts in terms of how we're looking at it. Completely, like I said, the entire IP is in-house created, the coding is in-house. And then we partner with a lot of fintechs on core technologies, and of course, a lot of tech solution providers. Again, pretty much on Agile and DevSecOps principles. So it's an interesting shift for a bank actually, and that's why I wanted to bring this out. This is the kind of system I always do this. I thank my partners because this is the number of, and this is not necessarily an Aerospike, I know I'm talking in an Aerospike event, but everybody matters here. It's very important that every single partner out here who's helped us to build this system, that's how we're looking at it. So we do work with a very significant, share of startups who work with us actually. So this is pretty much what it is. I will just play a small video here, and that's pretty much what it is. So this is our all new app actually. of it. I hope you found this useful.